I want to go over to answering the questions of the members of Parliament in the first round, and I start with the questions of Member of Parliament Gomes. Our first question, strict focus on higher education based on labor market. MP disagrees with it. They should be able to offer programs that elevate the job availability in the market. The provisions, so MP, the provisions for the funding of higher education programs are broader than a strict focus on labor market. The minister's decision to fund a program will take into consideration both the job market perspectives of students and St. Martin's economic development and social needs. Our need for programs that elevate existing jobs can be considered as an economic or social or societal need in relation to the students' labor market perspective. The foreign question, foreign students. Was there consultations with Minister of Justice on this matter? How do we handle it right now? How will we handle it in the future? Mr. Chairman, through you to the Honorable Member of Parliament, at the moment, the Ministry is aware of protocols regarding foreign students, which are between the Ministry of Justice and USM. And it is the intention to follow in this direction also with other institutions. Article 121, permission to adjust admission fees. Would government permission now slow down the process? Would it be possible to maybe allow an annual increase in percentage of fees? Member of Parliament, the draft delegated legislation, the LBHAM, will provide for an annual adjustment of the tuition fees to index the general price developments. On the basis of Article 121, a higher tuition fee can be requested for a specific study program or for a specific program within a study program. The minister will only grant permission for this if the quality or accessibility of the education is not compromised. Number 4, viability of the law. How does the language difference of Dutch and English of the law affect USM? The USM should not be affected by the language difference of Dutch and English. Article 19 allows the institution the option of choosing English or Dutch as the language of instruction and examination. Within an institution, programs can be offered and examined in both languages. If an institution wishes to use a language of instruction other than the one of the official languages of St. Martin, the draft ordinance allows for this, provided there is a connection with education. Education may be offered in other language and examinations may be administered in another language when, number 1, it concerns a course related to that language, the education is given by a guest speaker, the specific nature / organization or quality of the education or origin of the students justifies this, or this takes place in the context of internationalization. Mr. Chairman, this brings me to the question of Member of Parliament Westcott Williams. In 2018, a presentation based on research paper was presented to Parliament. Did this paper serve as the basis of this law for tertiary education? The answer is yes. The research conducted and approved by the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports in 2017 serves as the basis for the policy that the draft higher education seeks to establish. Question 2, NEPA. Is NEPA not considered higher education, or is NEPA not considered in this law of higher education? Reference to a document by NUFIC. The National Institute for Professional Advancement, NIPA, is not an institution for higher education and does not offer higher education courses. NIPA offers training in secondary vocational education on the basis of the Ordinance on Secondary Vocational Education Training, Landsverordening, Secundair Beroepsonderwijs en Educatie. Question 3. 2018 presentation, chapter. What does St. Martin have to take into account is that countries have less to spend on tertiary education. What is the minister's opinion on this? Where do we stand on the ability to finance what level of tertiary education? Member of Parliament, in the 2018 presentation, reference was made to research findings that sustainable financing of public higher education institutions is a challenge for governments worldwide as they seek to meet the demand for higher education. Based on that research, the Council of Ministers took the time. Based on that research, the Council of Ministers at the time took the following policy decisions on higher education. 1, tie the economic growth agenda and the needs of the labor market directly to the educational agenda for higher education, tertiary education planning. 2, accept the realities for the level of ambition when focusing on the role of education, aim to grow steadily. 3, attract more foreign students. 4, be willing to invest and pay the core cost for higher education until a maximum percentage, and also organize quality assurance through specialized agencies / organization to maximize international quality assurance. And these policy decisions serve as the basis for the draft ordinance on higher education.
Prime Minister, can you provide an update on the critical projects that are being executed by NRPB? Off the top of my head, I can mention we have the Marie-Laurent School, the sport facilities, Charles Leopold Bell, and even the library that I just mentioned.
Yes, I am the minister in charge of the trust fund projects, but I don't have every single project off the top of my head. We receive tons of updates all the time. What I can say is that it remains a priority to get all of those projects that you mentioned. The schools are starting, the rest of the schools that hadn't started yet, etc. The library as well. I can't say specifically where it is, but of course the demolition of that building has to take place before they can move forward. And I will ensure that we send that out in writing. The other projects, let me see, I have a little overview here. There are actually a couple of missions, which I forgot to mention, ongoing in the month of October. We have a mission from the World Bank here that was here last week, another one this week, one on housing, one on mental health. That were 2 of the things we approved in the last steering committee. There's an ongoing discussion as to what will happen in the next steering committee in November. And those 2 were projects that still require some work to be done, as well as wastewater. NRPB has also updated, and the World Bank, that, as you know, the airport is on track. That's one of the more important ones as well. We have the, which project is this? Library services, restore access to an adequate and inclusive learning environment to reestablish library services, improve the availability of quality data, etc. This project is scheduled to close. It was approved in June 2022, and as of April 2023, 0.54 million has been disbursed out of the 26 point something. So there's a lot more to be done still in that project. But we are seeing that they are getting on track. It has the priorities of the Ministry of Education, which has a very good working team with the NRPB and the World Bank. And I will ask the minister to update specifically to the Foster Resiliency Learning Project, as well as the library, including the library, schools, sports facilities as well. But I know that they're well on the way. And outside of that, the capital investments also has an injection for some of the sports facilities, schools, as well as infrastructure for roads, etc. So a lot of persons have been asking over the time, and the CFT as well, not enough investments, etc. Now we have the access to the funds, and the trust fund money is there, but the process is what it is and requires several social and environmental checks to be done before the actual approvals by the World Bank to get them executed. So we look forward to the Ministry of Education's Management Information System also being finalized, and project management, financial management, and environmental and social safeguards being added to all projects.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXV, yeah. Your social health insurances.
During the hurricane season, a potential tropical cyclone can produce rainfall that can cause flash flooding and rockfalls. Stay away from flood-prone areas during heavy rainfall, such as Jump Up Casino on Emil Plain Road in Phillipsburg, ATLH Road Roundabout, L.B. Scott Road from Emilio Wilson Park until Cake House Supermarket, Zaker's Gut from Petro Plus gas station until the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Welcalaken Road K Hill from Welcalaken Road Roundabout until the One-Tete Loke Roundabout, Beacon Hill Road from Sunset Bar and Grill until the beginning of White Sands Road, and Rhine Road, also known as Mullet Bay Road, after Sonesto Maho Beach Hotel to the entrance of Cooper Coy from the intersection of the University Drive until the intersection of Rio Grande. For more information on how you can keep yourself and your family safe this hurricane season, visit stmartingolf.org/hurricane. This public service announcement is brought to you by the government of St. Martin.
The court's review was limited to what parties brought forward, and thus it concerned the allocation of domain land to 6 individuals in 2016. Both the court and the ombudsman acknowledged the legal basis for the minister to allocate domain land, the discretionary authority, contractual freedom that exists for the minister, and that such authority is also bound by principles of good governance. In its analysis, the court, however, has set new precedent by using the Didam arrest to give content to the principles of good governance it deemed applicable in this case, namely equality and transparency principles. The Didam arrest requires government to adhere to the following. The government body must firstly draw up criteria, policy, on the basis which the buyer, also the acquirer, is selected. This criteria, policy, must be objective, verifiable, and reasonable. The public body must then ensure an appropriate degree of publicity with regard to the availability of the immovable property, the selection procedure, the timetable, and the selection criteria to be applied. The government body must publish information about these aspects in a timely manner prior to the selection procedure in such a way that potential candidates can take note of it. The Ombudsman notes that the lack of a published policy has allowed successive ministers to issue domain land to a large degree at their discretion. This is further compounded by the lack of continuity with the constant changes in ministers over the years. The establishment of a policy and a central registry for the allocation of domain land has been a consistent recommendation of the Ombudsman since the inception of the institution. The Ombudsman observes that it is rather unusual for government to initiate court proceedings against its own people regarding their own processes, which they have been following consistently for years. The question is, to what extent the average man or woman can be held accountable for the government's shortcomings, such as the lack of a public policy. The people trusted government, followed a process in accordance with standard procedures to obtain domain land, including paying to have the land measured. As the voice and protector of the rights of the people, the Ombudsman is asking Parliament, the representative of the people, to consider all aspects of this case, as well as the effects of the lack of policy, and ensure that it is addressed comprehensively. The Ombudsman is presently handling a complaint whereby complainant, after having paid all the fees, the canon, for the transfer of the leased land, the Ombudsman is presently handling a complaint whereby complainant, after having paid all the fees for the transfer of the leased land, is unable to obtain the land because the notary could not make the transfer of leased land as a result of jurisprudence dated the 26th November 2021, namely the Didam arrest. The notary informed complainant that government must comply with the above-mentioned requirements set in said arrest in order to transfer the land. The notary can be held accountable. The notary can be held accountable if this is not the case. In the Didam case law, it was pointed out to the notaries that they cannot turn a blind eye when having to deal with the transfer of any type of title to an immovable property owned by a municipal or country, read Country St. Martin, and not inquire if there is a policy in place.
I'll cover the complaints handled. The Ombudsman continues to find ways to efficiently handle complaints and accurately reflect the work conducted by the Bureau. This has resulted in more in-depth and lengthy handling of inquiries received at the Bureau, also known as information windows. An IW can entail providing the complainant with information, referring them to the relevant institution, and/or mediating complaints. These requests are general complaints that have not led to a report. General complaints will now be added to the total amount of complaints that led to a report by the Ombudsman. Thus, in 2022, there were a total of 341 complaints handled, of which 37 resulted in a report by the Ombudsman. General complaints The statistics show that a total of 304 general complaints were received. When broken down into different categories, the most complaints concern the topics civil cases, so persons coming with concerns regarding a labor dispute. This amounted to 27. Police, 26, followed by immigration, 25. Inquiries, complaints regarding tax assessments came up to a total of 20. Rental disputes, domain affairs also garnered much attention from the public, with each totaling 16. General complaints can range from not knowing where to go with their issue and therefore being referred to the relevant institution. It can also mean that persons come to the Ombudsman with questions, as well as when there is a communication breakdown between government and complainant, requiring some form of intervention from the Ombudsman. Moving on to reports. In 2022, a total of 37 complaints led to a report by the Ombudsman. The ministries accounted for 35 of these investigations, and the ZBOs accounted for 2. The significant decrease in the number of complaints for the ministries compared to last year can be attributed to the increase in complaints against the Ministry of Romi with regard to the OTB systemic investigation. The Ministry of Romi accumulated the most investigations in 2022 with 9, followed by the Ministry of TIAT with 8, and the Ministry of Justice with 7. From the 9 investigations into the conduct of the Ministry of Romi, 6 were for the account of Domain Affairs, 2 for the Inspectorate, and 1 for the Permits Department. Despite meetings and agreements to respond to complaints, the Ombudsman continues to observe minimum response to complainants as well as the investigations of the Ombudsman from this ministry. The Ombudsman has been reiterating her concern about this ministry's ability or inability to serve the public due to the existing structural deficiencies since the year report of 2018.
This Central Committee meeting of Parliament, that we look very carefully at the issues that the Ombudsman has highlighted as areas for the Parliament of St. Martin to take note and act upon. So it is, in my opinion, not sufficient to thank the Ombudsman for a beautiful report and then put the report somewhere in a desk. There are several issues, important issues that have been highlighted, and too often we see with reports from high councils of state that the following year, it will be observed that the Parliament received reports and did nothing. And that the same things that were reported last year or this year will be reported next year. So I think the Central Committee of Parliament, given the importance of some of the topics that have been addressed here, and where no action has come, no policies have been drafted, that careful attention is paid to that, and that the Parliament, through the Central Committee, picks up on these issues and decide how to go forward. I think it will behoove the Central Committee of Parliament to, where necessary, bring in the relevant ministers. We're now nearly at the end of 2023, and it would be good to note if, since the compilation of this report, if any improvements have been made with respect to the matters that have been highlighted, especially those that the Ombudsman and the staff of the Ombudsman Office has signaled as being very, very important issue. This matter of especially procedures and policies where bidding, etc., are concerned is a matter that I think the Parliament, we have spoken about it over and over again. Every especially every budget meeting, it comes back. We have been told it's going to be, it's happening. It was at the Council of Advice, then it came back, then it will be part of the TWO, and on and on and on and on. And so, Mr. Chairman, I think in this particular case that this committee should pick up its responsibility. The Ombudsman is there to report, which they have done, and Parliament needs to, from that report, distill which areas that is now our responsibility to give furtherance to.
Are you SXM insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXM is cardless. Request your My SXM account today and enter the virtual office of SXM. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
SXM, yeah. Your social and health insurances.
It's hurricane season. Are you prepared? Here are a few tips to keep in mind to help keep you and your family safe. The Atlantic hurricane season runs from June 1st to November 30th, with the peak occurring between mid-August and late October. This hurricane season, be sure to put together a go bag. A disaster supply kit including a flashlight, batteries, cash, first aid and supplies, medications, and copies of your critical information if you need to evacuate. This public service announcement was brought to you by the government of St. Martin.
Well, Barbados Light and Power's top management met with the members of the media today via an online call where they highlighted some key developments in the sector. Among them, the fact that 30% of the island's electricity is now being provided by photovoltaic systems. Managing Director Roger Blackman says there are over 3,000 customers using RE systems and providing the power via the grid along with some wind power.
Collectively, it represents about 13% of the island's electricity being produced by our customers via their renewable energy systems. And that is really quite a remarkable accomplishment and achievement, and puts us somewhere among the top 10 countries in the world, to put it in perspective, for solar PV penetration on the grid. So quite an accomplishment. And as a result, coming out of all of the good work that's been done over the past decade, putting feed-in tariffs in place and all of the stakeholders working together to move the industry forward. So a lot to be proud of in terms of progress. At the end of September, there was about 89 megawatts of distributed solar PV. So this is customer-owned PV, and a small amount of wind installed on the grid.